All right, everybody. This is my friend and shiro, Katie Caplener from Veda Jewelry and Now Eyewear. And Katie is from Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Yes.
And so we're going to start, Katie, just where'd you go to high school? Start there.
I went to Fayetteville High School, so I was a purple dog. I think that's what they still are, right? I feel like all the mascots are like changing around, but yeah. I went to, I was there. I went to Vandergrift Elementary, McNair Middle School, Woodland Junior High, and then Fayetteville, and then U of A. So I really love Fayetteville.
And when you got to the U of A, what did you study?
I started out in business, which I so wished I would have stayed with that. And then I decided I wanted to go a more creative route. And I graduated with a degree in fashion, but they don't call it fashion. I can't remember what the actual title is. It's changed too, but basically in retail and, clothing, fashion, with a minor in marketing, which was nice. I use those skills a lot now that I have my own brand.
Yeah.
But I do wish I would have stuck out the business degree, because that's something that we struggle with every day being a small brand.
Sure. Right. So when you were at the U of A, what were you doing in your free time? Like, what was the switch into fashion about?
I had worked retail my whole life. I think I started working at the mall when I was like 15 at some big box store that I won't name because it's embarrassing. And then I moved to a local boutique. I don't think it's still around, but it was like something on the square. And then I worked for my good friend Jade, who owned Lola, which is still around. And in college, I was working for her, and I was like, oh, I want to do this. Like, I want to be Jade. I want to own my own store. And I feel like that was the pivot that made me want to actually do that full time for my degree. But like I said, the business degree would have been very important for that too. But yeah, that was basically working in my free time. That was what I was doing.
And you finished school, and then what?
I finished school in the summer of 2012 and moved straight to Austin. I got a job at By George, which is a luxury retail store just in Austin. There's 2 locations. I interviewed and moved like the next day. I think I lied and said I already lived there, which, whatever. Nobody fact checked me. And I started on Monday, and I worked there for 3 years. I was on the sales floor. I worked back of house. I helped build their website, did all their social media, all their campaigns. Basically was marketing in the end, and styling. And through that store, I started selling vintage jewelry while I was still an employee, and realized pretty quickly that I could make money doing that, which was exciting. And then I realized you have to travel a lot to find vintage jewelry, especially if you're in a smaller city like Austin. And I had a full-time job, so that was a quick into that sourcing. And then I was like, oh, I should make my own stuff. Only having a few jewelry skills, I reached out to a few people and basically designed a few pieces and had them fabricated. And yeah, that's how it started. And then eventually I quit my full-time job, picked up a lot of freelance branding jobs, and then I think 2.5 years ago, I went full-time with Veda. So I've been doing it for 8 years, but only full-time for a couple, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, but I think that like side hustle thing is how so many people start. And actually,
Yes.
The thing that I always tell the students is what they should do, because it lets you sort of de-risk the situation. You're not counting on it for sort of your full-time. You're not counting on it for rent, and you can kind of be more adventurous in your branding and in which products you choose, and you don't have to just make a lot of the thing that sold. You can,
Yes.
you know, be more careful about your decision making when it's not your primary income source.
It was definitely for security reasons. I was obviously looking back, if I knew that I could have made it successful from the beginning, I would have, you know, quit and gone full time. But I didn't have that financial security blanket to, you know, even to get through a month without some kind of alternative income. So it kind of, I didn't really have the choice, and didn't have the resources to know how to get my brand funded, or, you know, it was definitely a survival tactic. But looking back, it was great because I got to actually work for other small brands, and I use a lot of the skills that I learned from being a, you know, contracted labor, that I wouldn't have known how to do, you know, if I would have left and gone on my own quicker. So it worked out.
Yeah, no, I think it usually does. You know, you learn from every job you have, right? Even if it's like washing dishes in the back of a restaurant
Totally.
someplace. And I think, you know, for the students and even for my own kids, it's like, just get a job, you know,
yeah,
and like,
that's number one. Yes.
just see what happens. And
Yeah,
then,
I was always working as soon as I mean, I was like dying to have my own money as a kid. I'm like, what can I do? What can I clean something? I want to buy some stuff. Like, let me do something. And then, yeah, and I was always picking up. I had a job in college, I had internships. I pretty much wanted to fill my time completely. Like, I wish I had that energy now. I feel a little old compared to how much energy I had in my college years. But I feel like that's like when people ask what they should be doing in college, I'm like, everything. Like, do everything. You have the energy. Like, just say yes to as many experiences as you can.
oh, totally right. I mean, I couldn't agree more. So, as Veda was sort of becoming its own line and you were figuring out, you know, how to get it out there, what were your primary sort of, since your minor was marketing, what were your primary marketing techniques?
Well, I would definitely Instagram, because back then it was free, and not that it's not free anymore, but as you know, a lot of it, to get any kind of attention, you're paying for it. But I would say definitely social media, and I was working at one of the most popular stores in the city. So that was easy. I was, you know, word of mouth, like showing people and talking about it every day, which was amazing. And that's obviously not the case for everyone that starts their own brand. But if you can get in a place whatever city you're in, that's a, you know, kind of a landmark place, and promote your stuff, then that's like so nice.
And so recently you've added eyewear as,
Yes.
I think, I mean, to me, it's a very natural extension, but actually, probably that's not the case in terms of like business line or the way that most.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's definitely not like a normal, well, I don't know. I think the jewelry knowledge has nothing to do with the eyewear world, other than it's, you know, if you go shopping online, eyewear and jewelry are under the accessories category. That's
Yeah.
pretty much it.
Yeah.
As far as manufacturing and design, they don't have much in common. But I did want to stay in the accessories vein. I know, just thinking about expanding the brand, I never, even though I come from clothing and clothing construction and selling clothing, I moved away from that once I got into the jewelry world. And I think eyewear, personally, I love eyewear. I've collected it forever, you know, from gas station frames to, you know, nice vintage designer frames. So it was always a personal like hobby, I would say. But then one of my best friends comes from eyewear design and marketing, and she was always pushing me. She's like, what's next for Veda? What can you do? What do you want to do next? And it kind of just was that organic thing, because I had her to bring onto the team, and you know, it was it kind of was something that we joked about, and then it became a reality. And then in March we launched the first frame, and I'm like, oh my gosh, did we actually do that? Like, we started talking about it in 2018, which seems like forever ago. But yeah, it kind of, I feel like I like blacked out for all of 2019, like trying to learn eyewear. And we went to Japan to meet the makers, and I feel like I took a crash course in production just being at the factory for 5 days. So yeah, it was a natural progression, but also kind of random.
Yeah. Well, but I think that crash course style is so helpful to just really like immerse
Yes,
yourself in whatever it is, whatever your
totally.
newest hobby slash occupation in terms of interest becomes. The students are doing projects right now, and they're starting with a design challenge, and I tried to
Cool.
say, like, do something you actually like,
Yes.
because otherwise it's not going to be very much fun to like
No.
go down the rabbit hole. But if it's something you like, then you get interested in, like, how many hinges are in the piano hinge on the
Yeah.
arm of the frame.
Yeah, I'm like super nerdy about it now. Like, at first I was like, let's make a cat eye. And I'm like, oh wait, there's like millions of ways to do this.
Yeah.
So it gets, yeah, it's fun. I learn new things every day, and there's definitely new challenges in both jewelry and eyewear. But the eyewear has definitely been you just have to make bigger decisions quicker. With jewelry, it's like you can make one piece and test it out, and if you don't like it, you melt the gold and forget about it. With eyewear, it's like you're paying for every prototype, major money. The tooling is, you have to make molds, it's a different world. And I feel like I have to pay attention more than the jewelry can be a little more fun and fast, and the eyewear is like months and months and months of prep before you even hold a tangible frame.
Yeah.
But which is great, but you definitely have to create things you like, because you're starting to look at it sometimes 6 months before you ever see the prototype, and then it's it can be 90 plus more days before you have anything to sell. So the timeline on that, it's way longer than clothing or jewelry, I would say.
And talk about your team a little bit. I think, when you're doing something that's relatively small, or a relatively small team, you spend so much time with those people, and it's so
Yes.
important for them to be the right people. So how has your team sort of come together, and who is that now?
I've been super lucky. I feel like I've had the same people since the beginning. My studio director has been with me for 6 going on 7 years, and we started with her making jewelry at her like home studio, and then we finally got like a garage studio, and then we kept like baby step upping our work experience. And now we're in a studio on the east side of Austin with I have another employee who's more like operations and office manager. And then I have my eyewear team in LA, which they come from the eyewear world, a designer and my eyewear director, who's one of my best friends. And then every once in a while we'll have a assistant bench jeweler, which we're looking for one right now. But yeah, we keep it super small. And then I contract out, my main photographer is another one of my best friends in Austin. And I pretty much do everything else myself. So it's very small.
Are you still doing most of the sort of social media and marketing stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, I do all the emails, all the social media, all the content planning, and the photo shoot, like production, as far as who's going to shoot it, what models, what the creative direction is. Yeah, I've kept that all to myself, which I'm just now to the point where I'm like, I've got to get some of this off my plate, especially the marketing stuff, because I've found that having more eyes on it is actually better than, if you're too close to it. I get like, sometimes we have all this content, and a lot of times it doesn't even get used because I'm busy, designing the next collection or and it's a shame because, you know, some of that content, we definitely like worked hard on it, paid for it. And then if it doesn't get pushed out into the world, whether it's email marketing or website or social media, it kind of, you know, it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't age well. And then you've kind of missed the mark on it.
Missed the
So
win.
having help there is good.
Yeah, for sure. And what do you think? So you and I were talking just a little before the call about sort of the timing of the eyewear launch with the pandemic, but we're now a year into this mess, and I feel like
Yes,
I lost all of 2020. 2020 is some sort of weird, like hazy blur for me.
totally.
And here now, the third week of January of 2021, I'm just starting to feel like, okay, wait, what happened? You know, like,
Totally. Yeah.
So you guys have your bearings now. So what, now I'm going to ask, what's next? Like, where are you in terms of launching eyewear, and what do you want to be spending your time on?
Speaking of 2020, I wish I would have like kept a daily journal, because it would be, because like you said, I have no idea what happened. I like woke up and I'm like, was there a year that I missed? Because it was definitely survival mode in the beginning. But yeah, I think we've pivoted and figured it out, and we are moving on, for lack of a better term. We just launched new eyewear. We had to postpone the production for a variety of reasons. Our Japanese production, the factory shut down for a couple months, so that was, you know, that stopped everything that was supposed to launch last summer. And then I postponed it further just for financial reasons, because we had no idea if we were going to make it through, you know, another day. And so I feel like we're playing catch up right now, but luckily, industry-wide, people aren't as, oh, I might have lost you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it trickled down like it was gonna die. Sorry. But yeah, I feel like we're launching the new eyewear, and luckily the industry is not as putting as much pressure on like seasons, which was a big thing in eyewear, jewelry, clothing, like anything in fashion. People are, before the pandemic, I feel like it was major pressure to push out new product all the time. We were so small that I kind of already wasn't doing that. We were kind of fudging it, and like, I don't know, we just didn't have the power or financial backing to really play that game. But luckily it's like the norm not to do that, which is so nice and much more healthy from a brand perspective, and like environmentally. It's too much new product all the time. But yeah, we have launched the first 2 frames, and 2 more are coming. We'll have all of them by March. And yeah, and we're still making jewelry as usual. We're releasing a few new styles in the next couple months, alongside the eyewear. So that's exciting. And yeah, we're just looking to grow. Like I said, I'm trying to hire some support, marketing and manufacturing. I mean, we make all the jewelry here. So as the brand grows, we just need more people in the studio. So hopefully that'll happen in the first quarter, which is already almost over, it feels like.
No, so. Right? But that's exciting. It's nice to hear that you've kind of figured it out. And I do think that's the nice part about being small, is as long as you're pretty small, you can be pretty nimble. And as things get wonky, you have a lot of maneuverability that if you're big and you're sitting on mountains of inventory, you don't have that sort of option.
And that's something, yeah, we definitely, a lot of the things that we were already, how we were operating, you know, it was lucky because we didn't have much overhead as far as inventory goes. Other than the 400 frames we had got in March, all of our jewelry is made to order. So it's not like we were sitting on a lot of inventory, but that just comes from us being so small. You know, we could have been like just a little bit bigger, mid-size, and had a big problem on our hands. But we got through by default, I think, for being so small.
On the jewelry side, who do you find is your like customer? who are the people that are finding you and looking?
Yeah. I think, in the beginning, like I said, the old school customers from the store that I worked at by George were definitely my first fans, for lack of a better, like they were the ones that were super stoked and supporting me because they knew me as a salesperson, stylist, team member. And then from there, I feel like, and that crowd was, as far as demographics go, it was definitely like a middle-aged female, which, we were only making, or the jewelry was presented on the women's side. Now I definitely market more unisex, but and then from there, I think we started doing customs, which that broadened our audience a lot because it wasn't so specific to the collection designs, which has a, very specific look. I feel like as soon as we started doing customs, those were, they could be anything. And a lot of them were engagement rings, of course. But that was like a huge marketing piece because I feel like when someone's wearing an engagement ring that you made, it's already a conversation piece, especially if you just got engaged. So that, I think that opened up a definitely younger audience for us. Just, we're still in the South, and traditionally people are getting married for the first time in their, mid 20s to mid 30s. So I think that opened us up to a new audience. And then now with the eyewear, we've got more of a male audience because we're doing all the frames, super, genderless. And I feel like that's another thing. I want our audience to grow and expand, which launching the eyewear definitely, there's some people that don't care about jewelry that are like
Sure.
eyewear freaks. So yeah, now we have those people. And then, it's funny, we've had a lot of those people say like, oh, we were never into jewelry, but, we'll buy this frame and we want a necklace. And I'm like, wow, cool. So it's kind of like this coming together of different people. So it's fun.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I'm a huge fan, and I have several of your jewelry pieces and also now sunglasses that I will make sure the students see as we go along. But I think,
Yay.
For all you guys out there, Katie was sitting in your seat not that long ago. And I think, thinking about the ways that your own personal passions play into your work. And one thing I wanted to talk about quickly before we go is, was Austin where you wanted to be, or is that where the job was? Like, did you decide after school, like, ooh, I really want to be in Austin, or were you mostly on the store?
I definitely wanted to be in Austin. I think it was the first, I think I would have been open to other places, but I think that was my first try. And I had a lot of friends who might have been older or graduated a little bit before me that had moved down pretty recently. And so I definitely wanted to try Austin first. And it just worked out. And I think as far as what I wanted to do, the store that I got a job with first was like number one on my list. So once I got the job, I was like, this is perfect. And it wound up being, and Austin was so much different almost 9 years ago. Like it in a good way, and I love how it's grown. Like I have no complaints, but it was super buzzy when I got here, and I was 23, and it was just like the best. Like the social scene was so good. I don't know, now I'm 31, but it's like I just it couldn't have been better. I definitely am glad it worked out this way, but who knows, like if I would have gone to New York or LA, I might have never started my own brand, or because I feel like those cities, there's more opportunity in fashion for sure, and Austin just doesn't have as many options there. So I think who knows what would have happened, but Austin was definitely top of my list.
I mean, I think it's a real thing, it's a big question. And I think as people have sort of experienced remote work via the pandemic, it's such a different question that it used to be,
Totally.
and people really are, I think, spending a lot more time thinking about where they want to be geographically and then figuring out how to work from there. And when I talk to the students now, it seems like a lot of them are really focused on where they want to be, which I think is great, you know.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I ended up in Arkansas sort of accidentally, but I also don't know that I would have started something on my own if I'd been in a bigger place. I sometimes
Totally.
being in a smaller market, sort of necessity is the mother of invention, right? You like
Yes.
don't have so many opportunities, so you make them up.
Yes. I mean, that's totally what happened with me. I think I was ready for growth and wanted, you know, something more, or wanted to be more busy or whatever. And I created my own opportunities, because not to say that there weren't some. You know, I feel like it was a nice push. I was like, oh, there's nothing that I like exactly want to do, so I'm just gonna figure it out.
Yeah, totally. And
But
I
yeah, it's
already know
great.
this about you, but I know that you've also been involved in a variety of sort of extracurricular activities. One of the first
Definitely.
things that we got to know each other over is a sort of festival for creatives called Cherry on Top. Could you talk just a little bit about what that is,
Yeah.
was, will be?
Yes. So in 2018, I believe, we had the first gathering in Marfa, and which is a little town in West Texas. And that was it. Totally happened by accident. I had a good friend who was living out there. She was working for one of the bigger hotels, and they had just built an event space, and we're basically offering it for free, you know, for people to come just activate the space, and not as a tourism thing necessarily, but like definitely to get people out there and to see Marfa and all that. And it started as like, hey, do you want to come out and curate like a little pop-up like shopping event? And I was like, sure, that sounds fun. You know, it's like a 7-hour drive. I'm like, that's great. And then the two of us together were like, this could be so much bigger than like a pop-up shop with like some vendors in this event space. So she's a big activist, and you know, at the time there was a lot of the women's rights marches and that kind of thing going on. So we really kind of came together on that, and yeah, we just, it snowballed into this way bigger thing than it ever was supposed to be, but in a really awesome way. And yeah, we still want to continue it, but obviously with how 2020 went, we kind of, you know, put pause on that. But yeah, it's called Cherry on Top, and it's basically just my friends and I curating a big party of creatives, and there's always a nonprofit that we donate to. The past two were Planned Parenthood, and yeah, I'm hoping that we can make it happen again. We had people, some of our friends, like flying in from Italy and all over the world, so it was amazing. But yeah, I making time for stuff like that is super important for me, especially being in the creative world. I feel like it's a nice way to talk to other creatives and see what everyone, you know, what everyone else is doing, how they're running their business or how they're staying inspired. And I feel like especially after 2020, we're all going to need that. So as soon as we can gather again,
Yeah, right.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, it was a really amazing thing to get to be a part of. You know, I got to tag along with some friends of ours from up here to join into that, and I think Marfa is such an interesting place, and
Yes,
you know, has such a deep art history anyway. And I think because it's such a blank canvas of a landscape, it really does put you in that frame of mind of, you know, starting fresh and thinking about what you want to do. And, you know, I've of course had all, I feel like a cat with 9 lives at this point because I've done so many different things over the years. But
totally.
I think staying interested and interesting and looking around is what gives you the ability to come back and really focus on whatever your primary work is. Like, I know for myself that at times when I don't really have something besides work going on, I'm not as productive because
Totally.
I'm too in one lane. I need like a variety of things to be engaged in to be good at any of them.
Yes, I totally agree. And even, you know, when we started planning Cherry on Top, I'm like, how am I going to make time for this? Like, because I didn't want to, you know, I didn't want to give it. I did want to give it my all. I didn't want to, you know, make it a side thing. And but then you get into it and you're like so passionate about it that you just make time. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, right.
And it was so rewarding. And I still get messages, but we had the last one in I guess the end of 2019. And I still get messages that they're like, it was, you know, 3 or 4 days, and people are like, that changed my life. I'm like, what? It definitely changed mine. But just to hear, you know, that something you worked hard on and for no money made a difference in somebody's life is pretty cool.
Totally. And it was that sort of thing, at least the part that I got to be involved in. And I think, you know, for a different audience than maybe those things are typically aimed at, you know, it was
Yes.
a very young kind of hip crowd and not maybe quite so like soccer mom as women's retreats or whatever. And
Totally.
it wasn't all women by any means.
No.
Certainly female forward in a really, I
Totally.
think, positive way. And in so much as even all the boys were very much in favor of like the girl power of the play
Yes.
end of the event. And I think that's a great thing. It gives them an opportunity to be feminists, right?
Totally. Yeah. And, you know, I think the conversation shifting with all of that. And when we were doing it, we definitely had like a women's empowerment undertone. But obviously that's still in play. But I think, you know, like you said, having people of all genders there and supporting and just, you know, there to meet people and have a good time. We didn't want to like box ourselves in this feminist only, because that, I don't know, I feel like that can be a little inclusive, you know, or exclusive, and we wanted to be inclusive. And
Totally.
But I think it's hard, which that's another thing with planning events or big gatherings. It's the messaging is really tricky. You have to make sure you're, you know, saying what you really mean and not be too exclusive or, you know, exclude anyone. And that was a crash course in that because there were people emailing like, well, are we invited because we're not women? I'm like, what part of the messaging told you that you weren't invited? You know, but it's funny because you don't think of those things. You don't think of them. So
well, and I think the general language is so male biased that if it's not that, then it people think it's like super girly, you know what I mean? Like if it's not just very sort of male focused, then it's like, well, by default, it's like, no, remember we have a spectrum here, people. There's like lots of room. Well, it's a big tent.
Yeah, but it's a learning lesson for how to speak or write or however you're, you know, advertising to make sure you're saying what you mean, basically. And I feel like that's something I would love to, like, I always joke about I need to take like speaking lessons or like, you know, because I haven't had any of the like PR training or all of that for being a brand owner. And that's something that I think is really important, especially for like people in my generation and the generation above me. You know, it's something that I don't know, you want to say what you mean, and it's hard to do it's like, sometimes I say things and I'm like, that's not what I meant.
No, I think the nice part is that I think people are so much more aware of their language than they used to be, and the intent and the effort is there in a way that it hasn't always been. And I think, you know, we're all figuring it out together, but at least we're working on it, you know.
Totally.
Well, thanks a million for your time. The students will be, I'm sure, thrilled to have somebody who's come through their same seat. They've had a few, but it's been a lot of people who are from lots of other parts of the world. So it's nice to have a hometown kid. And I will get to see you again soon, but I'll also keep you up to date with any questions they maybe come up with. And Hopefully someday we'll do this in real life in front of a whole room of actual students.
Yes, I'd love to. I love any excuse to come home.
Yeah, right.